You indicated on your radio show last night you're going to be without Brandon Williams potentially this week. What more can you tell us about the extent of his injury?
Yeah, you know, Brandon, before he came to Arizona, had an operation on his knee. It wasn't an injury. It was more, I guess the word is congenital. And they were able to repair it, and Brandon and his family were really smart in that he missed quite a bit of time. He came to us with that, and we were aware of it. And there's been a couple times since he's been here, as far back as early in the summer, where we're aware that his knee may swell or he has some discomfort, and we shut him down. But for the most part, he made it through 20 games and about 70 practices without anything pain-related hitting him. For some reason, at the end of the LA trip, in which he probably played his best overall game at Arizona against UCLA, he experienced some pain in that same knee. So as we've shut him down, that pain has had a hard time going away. And, so now it's his best interest just to make sure that, that we know everything that's going on, that we shut him down, kind of allow that pain to diminish. And, the hope is every day, every week it diminishes, and that at some point this season he potentially could return. But I don't know when that date is. I don't know any more than that right there. And, I got my fingers crossed for him that he'll be okay, because he's obviously a terrific player, playing his best basketball of his young career at Arizona. And as somebody who's already kind of paid the price with that knee, and that he's gotten through a hard part before he got here. So we have all the experts in the world looking and helping both him and his family, and obviously our team doctors and Justin. And I think the number one priority is just to make sure that he's okay and his future's okay before we would implement him back in any way to our team.
The test found that it's related possibly, or anything that to this, or could it be kind of like a lingering thing after you have that surgery?
Mm-hmm. He did not sustain an injury. That's the one thing that I know. It's the same knee, and I think that what I'm being told is it's just part of the path that he's traveling with the surgery that he had and the problem that maybe he had before he got here to Arizona. But, a couple weeks from now, he could be back and playing his best. I look at the last game that he played there in UCLA. I mean, he was playing well, but I think he experienced some discomfort then, and then almost like the next day, it changed. So hopefully we can get him through this.
How's Jeter's status? You said it's about 50% last week now.
I mean, Chase, before we played ASU, he practiced for about 45 minutes. We didn't really have the intention of maybe even playing him as many minutes as he ended up playing, but once the game started, he seemed to be able to run fine. But, he wasn't himself, especially offensively. So, this break kind of comes at a good time, and we were able to take Friday off after the ASU game. We had a kind of a skill light practice, but able to do something non-contact on Saturday. Practiced very hard on Sunday, and then we were off yesterday. So I think it's been a good blend of practices and getting those guys some rest, and then we're back at it here today and tomorrow.
Was Chase's health part of the reason you guys decided to run a 2-3 zone during the ASU game to start it? Or?
No, I think we played 3 possessions of zone. I think with our current situation, sometimes not allowing the other team to maybe pick on a defender or try to create a foul situation where they go at a player on our team who has already committed 2 or 3 fouls. I think that's a strategy that makes more sense now than maybe it once did, but for the most part, we're a man-to-man team, as you know.
Several times defensively, Sean, when you guys were kind of doubling up top with the big, you got beat to the basket on some cuts, and it looked like there was, a couple times Brandon Randolph was there or Smith, and they're kind of in between the cutter and the perimeter shooter. Mm-hmm. It seemed like they stayed more with the perimeter shooter. Is that what they're supposed to do in those situations?
No, you're right. We ran into problems. I would call it like off ball, where you're watching the ball, you have to know where it's at, but you're responsible for the man you're guarding. He doesn't have the ball at that moment. And You know, sometimes you start to look at the basketball too much, your man disappears. And that's been problematic, but in that game, I would think, you know, ASU probably got 6 points, 8 points just on a back cut in which the guy that was guarding the cutter just lost sight of him. Being able to see both ball, man, you know, that's the fundamentals of defense. And, you know, I said it after the game and talked about it a little bit yesterday. You know, really looking at that game closely, if you can make 14 threes and I think 28 attempts, I know how I feel when the team makes 14 of 28 against our defense. You know, it's tough to win. Then playing an overtime game with single-digit turnovers, 9, 10 turnovers, which we had, which is excellent. You know, offensively, we ended up with 83 points for a reason. And I think in regulation, to score 83 points on an away court here, you know, our offense had a good night. We weren't able to leave with road victory because at the same time our defense left us. Arizona State scored more points per possession against our defense than any team has this season. And that dates back to game 1, covers Maui, any game that we've played. And so I think our defense has carried us when we've been successful this year. Our offense is always something that we're trying to improve and make sure that we're the best we can be. But against Arizona State, it flip-flopped, and it's disappointing because, you know, I think when you're good at something and you've done it over a long period of time, you want that to show up in your biggest games. And defensively, we had too many breakdowns to win.
Does that offensive performance you had give you hope for the future in terms of shooting?
You know, it did. I mean, we've struggled shooting at times this year for sure, but we took good threes. If you really look hard at the 14 threes that we made, they were open, they were uncontested. There's a reason that we created those shots, and I think that's the starting point, that, you know, can we create good looks from three? And if we do, that's our best chance of making them.
How much did you feel that was Justin's best game in terms of facilitating those opportunities?
Offensively, Justin was terrific. I mean, 9 assists and 2 turnovers. He played over 40 minutes. You know, the one thing about Justin Coleman is, you know, where we would be without him is a far different place than the place we're currently at. You know, he's been consistent. He's played injured with a dislocated shoulder. He's practiced hard. He's one of our team's leaders. He's played some great basketball. I go back to Maui against Iowa State, which Iowa State's proven they're an excellent team. The only reason we won that game was his second half offensive performance. But played with a lot of poise at ASU, did an excellent job at finding Ryan Luther. There was about a 4-minute segment where he really was in total command and control of the game. Like all of our players, you know, we don't have no room for error defensively. You know, we have to play big. We have to be on it, like you had mentioned. We can't give up things that we can control, back cuts, where we lose sight of the guy we're guarding. Justin's working hard in that area as well, but he was very, very, very good against ASU, especially on offense.
You were asked on the Pac-12 call about Washington kind of being in the role that you've been in the past, the 9-0 start and all that, and that it's maybe flipped this time. Can you use that as motivation, that instead of being the hunted, you're the hunter this time, and maybe the pressure is more on Washington coming in here?
You know, certainly. I think our players are aware of that. I'm sure our fans and our crowd is too. We haven't had many home games in which we would be an underdog like we'll be against Washington. That's obviously to Washington's credit, but we've really been that team all year. You know, I don't think we've necessarily entered the year or have really gone at any point to being the favorite or the hunted. You know, I think we've always aspired to be a good team and a team that maybe is better than everybody thought we were going to be. And we've played some excellent basketball. I mean, we're sitting on 14 wins, and where we go from here will determine, I think, a lot of how successful this season really was, especially considering our starting point last spring.
Coach, how would you characterize the season for Ryan Luther?
You know, I'll put Ryan Luther in Justin Coleman's category. I don't know where we would be as a team without him. He's contributed every day, every game. He's an incredible teammate, a great young man. I wouldn't say he's one of our 2 leaders. I think Chase Jeter and Justin Coleman are, but, you know, Ryan has the respect of everybody in our program because of how unselfish he is, what a great guy he is off the court, and he cares a lot about winning. He's almost too hard on himself at times, you know. But statistically, he's one of our team's best shooters. That really proved itself out the other night against ASU, making 5 threes. Offensive rebounder, contributes in that area. You know, I think a lot like everybody on our team, we're asking him to do a lot defensively and continue to grow and improve. But he's been a real consistent part of what we've done. That's what I would say. Those 2 guys coming as grad transfers last spring really allowed us to have the success we've had, and really, when you look at the next 4 or 5 weeks, there's no 2 players that will be more important than Justin Coleman and Ryan Luther.
Sean, there was a report yesterday in Yahoo Sports that the NCAA has begun looking into your program and potential violations. What can you tell us about what you know about the beginning of that process?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Do you anticipate you might be called to testify at Christian Dawkins' trial?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Coach, I've read that Coach Popovich during the season spends the bulk of his practice time focusing on their plays and what they do well versus instead of scouting the other team until the playoffs. How would you say that you do that in the college game? Do you focus more on your team during practices or the scouting of the opponents?
We do. We spend a lot of time, you know, doing what we do. You know, and I think that any program that really believes in who we are and the way we do things, that's the best way to improve and be a consistent team. Because as much as you like to take away the other team's tendencies and strengths, and certainly be aware of what they do well, that's scouting, that's important. The bulk of what we can control is our players, our team, our effort level, and making sure that we're good at what we do. And when that's in place, scouting is a lot easier. So I would say we err on the side of trying to be the best team we can be.
Without Brandon, do you expect Alex is your main backup at the point, or would somebody else maybe fill in there when Justin's out?
Yeah, I would say Alex would be our backup point.
Because you've already gone through this, at least one game, do you have to do any adjustments? What do you do tinkering-wise because Brandon's not there?
No, you're right. We've gone through it. We've practiced without him. We've played a game without him, so we're going to be more suited to be successful. And just in terms of the roles, you know, what that means to everybody. And that's the one thing when you have a key guy injured, it's not what he no longer brings to the table, it's how it affects everybody else. And everybody else is just a little bit different. You know, I'll use Justin Coleman as an example. He's going to play more minutes. And when you play more minutes, can't foul. You know, you have to play under fatigue. You have to play both ends. It's easier to break down defensively. Can wear him down. And, you know, Alex Barcelo, you know, talk about Alex. Alex, he's always played point guard from day one, so we're ready in case we get a foul situation or an injury. But he's played a lot of backup too. And now we're going to play him more as the backup 1, so that's a big difference for him as well. So that's the hard part about it, but, you know, it's up to us to adjust. And the one thing about our team is everybody that's currently practicing has a big role. We're really counting on everybody right now.
Was Alex in a similar position like Brandon where he had to know both positions, or did he go towards the shooting route now he's got to learn more point? Or what was his role at the start of the season?
No, we've always played 3-point guards for the reason that just occurred, unfortunately. You want to make sure that that's kind of like our quarterback, that in case of an injury, foul trouble, you lose 2 guys at once, that you have a 3rd player that's ready. So we've always prepared him for that. Same last year. So he knows what to do, and he does it every day in practice right now. And even while Brandon was practicing, there are times when Alex would play the 1 in practice.
So with Randolph and Dylan Smith, is it more the same with those guys, or what changes about what they do?
You know, nothing changes other than, you know, we're 1 rotation shorter. You know, we don't have 1 sub that we would have had. If you think about Brandon Randolph, Brandon Williams, and Dylan, you know, you could rest all 3 of those guys. They could all sub for each other. So with one of those guys no longer a part of the equation, again, you're asking everybody to do a little bit more.
A lot of teams in the Pac-12 play zone, but what makes Washington so special?
They're really good at their zone. You know, I think a lot of great programs recruit to what they do. And I think Mike Hopkins has done that already, but he's also inherited a good group of guys that I think fit the way they play. Can't imagine a better guard playing that zone than Thibault. He's so active, has such long arms. I think they were reigning Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. But they do it well. And there's a lot of ways to be a good defensive team. Their way is playing a 2-3 zone, and I think they're the ultimate, do what we do team. They're not going to show a whole lot of man-to-man. They're going to play zone, and that's what they believe in. And they're really good at it. Big reason they're 9-0 is their defense.
What makes the people talk about the Syracuse 2-3. What in your mind makes it different than a regular 2-3? Do you have some man principles in it, or is it sometimes look a little like a matchup, or how would you describe it?
I'll just answer the question watching Washington. Very seldom does a 2-3 zone create turnovers, create steal opportunities, to take, to create shot blocks. Think about zone. Usually think about a lot of three-point shots going up. Their zone can actually take the three-point shot away. So they really extend and do an incredible job of stealing the ball and creating turnovers. Playing against UCLA, watching their group, their talent, their depth, and just kind of watching them play against Washington. They had 18 turnovers at the half. Hard to win when you have 18 turnovers in a game, let alone in 20 minutes. But that's to Washington's credit. That's what they can do in the zone, and I would say that's one thing their zone really is unique about and exceptional.
Is there any, what do you lose? And maybe they have the athleticism and experience to compensate for that, but what do you lose when you extend that much? And I've heard maybe sometimes the short corner gets vulnerable. Do you see any spots in that when you have it?
I think you have to have players that can really put the ball on the floor and get between their defenders that, are skilled, can move the ball. Getting it in the middle, whether you drive it in the middle, catch it in the middle, and then once it's in the middle, and part B is great, you got it there, you got to score it. Watching us a year ago, first 20 minutes, we got the ball in there some, maybe not as much as we would have liked, but we got it in the middle. We didn't deliver. It was a different feeling. Once we settled into the second half a year ago, our offense was good enough to win that game. We really struggled guarding the low post. Their team is very similar this year in terms of personnel. It's really hard to judge that game because our personnel is so much different this year versus last year. But getting it in the middle, driving it in the middle, being able to make good things happen when you get it in there, that was a big part of our second half success last year. So how we do this year remains to be seen because we have a completely different group.
Throughout the year, you guys have been getting better and better at breaking the 2-3 zone. Now that it's a spread out 2-3 zone, do you think that Chase Jeter may be the key to breaking it at the high post and catching lobs, etc.?
I think not just Chase, but just generally you want to get production from your big guys. You don't want to ignore them or not allow them to catch the ball. Again, a year ago we did a good job of really allowing those big guys that we had to get it in the middle. And sometimes it's close to the basket, sometimes it's more towards the foul line. And then, the next phase is really important, that they have to make good decisions and be productive. But you want to have balance. I think on this year we're relying a lot on dribble penetration. Sometimes, I'll use USC as an example, we had some great offensive possessions where the ball moved. We dribble penetrated, we created a good opportunity, but it didn't go down. We didn't make the shot on that particular night. So against a team like Washington, you got to be hitting on all cylinders because they're not going to just give you multiple good opportunities. When you get those opportunities on offense, you want to be able to strike.
Obviously, the entire Pac-12 schedule is difficult, but a lot of people are looking at this particular stretch here with, the Oregon schools, UCLA, Arizona, and the Washington schools as maybe the defining stretch of what this team would be about. How frustrating is maybe the not knowing what this team would have been because of the injuries that you've had to deal with during this stretch?
We've quietly had a lot of injuries during my time. It's to our credit, they don't really stand out in the past because our depth won out. And when a couple guys were called upon to do more, they did. And that's a real credit to our program. This year, going into the season, the thing you worry the most about is any type of injury or foul trouble because we just weren't as deep and aren't as deep. So an injury to a key player can decimate a team that doesn't have great depth. So it's affected us for sure. Having said that, you know, we're not the only team that deals with that. It's up to us to do the best we can. We have a lot of guys that want bigger roles. You know, they practice hard every day. Now they have that opportunity. So with that bigger role, now they have the chance to, you know, show what they can do and really help our team. But do I think that a couple things with our personnel has hurt us in the last 3 weeks? No question. And it's a concern moving forward for sure.
One more for Coach.
Do you expect Dickerson will play for them? And if he's out, I mean, does that give a different look with Timmons or one of those other guys in the middle there for them?
I mean, Dickerson's very important to Washington. I saw his injury. It looked like it could be problematic for him, but he's an older guy. He's got a lot of pride. I'm sure if he's able to play, he will. But we're just going to assume that everybody on their roster is going to play. That's usually what happens. And if he's not going to play, then we'll adjust accordingly.
I mean, without him, have you noticed the difference with Timmons, who's more of a traditional big man, for example, or you know, what
Yeah,
does
I
that
mean,
change?
they don't have as much of an inside scoring punch without him, and you lose a player of his stature. It affects your depth.